Iowa Caucus chaos. Democrats are frustrated by a delay in the results from the first presidential nominating contest of 2020. We have a report and reaction. Speaking to the nation, President Donald Trump is set to deliver his third State of the Union address tonight on Capitol Hill. We have a preview. A father's love. Pope Francis tells the faithful why God is so happy when we go to confession. And a night to shine. Christian author and former football star Tim Tebow tells us why he's in Rome. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, February 4th, 2020. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. The Democrats' run to the 2020 election hits a roadblock in Iowa. Technical issues kept party officials from verifying who won Monday's Democratic caucus in the state. Now, multiple Democratic candidates are claiming success, while President Trump called the caucuses an unmitigated disaster. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Tracy, the president says he's the only one who can claim a big win in last night's caucus. He's now preparing for his State of the Union address tonight as Democrats look for answers in Iowa, continue on to New Hampshire, all in a race for the White House.
So thrilled to be here in New Hampshire.
Democrats running for president have left Iowa behind.
I feel good.
But it's unclear who the frontrunner is after a night of uncertainty in the Democratic caucus.
We don't know the results yet. Minor problem.
The Iowa Democratic Party says the results were delayed by glitches in a mobile app that was supposed to speed up the process. They add, "We have every indication that our systems were secure and there was not a cybersecurity intrusion." Before heading to New Hampshire and the second stage of voting in the Democratic primary, candidates sounded optimistic.
I have a good feeling we're going to be doing very, very well here in Iowa.
We feel good about where we are.
By all indications, we are going on to New Hampshire victorious.
But confusion in Iowa is giving the president a chance to slam his opponents. He tweets, "When will the Democrats start blaming Russia, 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 instead of their own incompetence for the voting disaster that just happened in the great state of Iowa?" Adding, "The Democrat caucus is an unmitigated disaster. Nothing works, just like they ran the country." The president says he's the winner in Iowa. Tonight, the president will give his State of the Union address in the House that impeached him.
And I think he's also going to talk about things that this administration can continue to do in advancing issues like school choice and continuing to protect the most innocent and sanctity of life.
It's a major accomplishment to stand up for life in all forms, from cradle to grave, and he's done that.
The White House announced the guests that will be attending tonight's State of the Union address, including 2-year-old Eli Schneider from Kansas City, Missouri. She was born at just 21 weeks and 6 days, making her one of the youngest babies to survive in the United States. Tracy.
Okay, thank you, Mark. White House correspondent Mark Irons. Thanks again, Mark. All right, we want to take a closer look now at what happened last night in Iowa. Now, traditionally, the Iowa caucus results provide the first concrete tally after months of speculation about the presidential primary. Joining me now from Des Moines is Alexandra Jaffe. She is national political reporter for the Associated Press. Alexandra, thanks a lot for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Alexandra, Democratic Party officials say that we will get a majority of the caucus results this evening. Can we talk about the pressure those officials have been under to report last night's outcome?
Absolutely. It's been extraordinary pressure, not just from the media and the public, but also from these campaigns that expected to have the Iowa caucus results last night to kick off the rest of the primary season and head into New Hampshire with some momentum. Around 9 p.m. last night, we started to realize that things were going wrong. We expected results at that point and they weren't coming. And the IDP wasn't really giving us much information. So there were a lot of calls into Democratic Party officials, a lot of speculation. None of that was cleared up until recently this morning. They came out publicly and said that they had issues with the reporting app.
The Democratic candidates, as we mentioned, now physically moved on to New Hampshire. That said, a lot of questions remain in Iowa because of that new mobile app that was used and supposed to help in reporting the results. Can you tell us a little bit more what went wrong there and why was there so much confusion last night?
Sure, it seems like there were issues from both the front end and the back end. So the precinct captains that were supposed to use this app to report back to the IDP their results, they weren't trained on it. Half of them said they weren't aware of it, they couldn't use it, they couldn't sign in. And then when they tried to report those results, they got error messages. Then on the IDP end of things, we were hearing from the Democratic Party that they weren't receiving the data in sort of a full way. They were getting sort of partial numbers or numbers that didn't add up. So at the end of the day, it wasn't working on either end, and they've had to check all of the results against paper results to make sure that everything has been accurate.
And with those official results, I know candidates resorted to their own messaging last night. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, along with Pete Buttigieg, all sounded like they were declaring victory. What kind of fallout do you expect that we'll see in the coming days?
Well, that's the thing. If every candidate declares victory, no candidate can declare victory. So at this point, the Iowa caucus results look like they're pretty much a moot point for a lot of the campaigns. We're going to sort of look at them as water under the bridge, and we'll have to look to New Hampshire for the first real sign of who has momentum in this race.
Yeah, and this latest snafu is just adding to criticisms that perhaps maybe the Iowa caucus process is no longer the way to go. Some top Democrats have also expressed concern that the demographic, that is, makeup in Iowa, doesn't really accurately reflect the rest of the country. What are you hearing there in the state?
Sure. As you mentioned, that's been going on for quite a while, but it's a debate that happens just about every 4 years when we have a caucus because there's always issues with this process. This year, it seems particularly pointed as there is this overarching debate within the Democratic Party about representation and diversity. And honestly, every Democrat I talk to about the caucuses says they think this was its death knell, the sort of nail in the coffin for the caucuses, and that we won't see another caucus going forward.
Yeah, quickly, we talked about New Hampshire. The primary is now a week away. There's also another debate Friday night. What kind of impact could that have ahead of next Tuesday?
Well, that's the thing. If we have no caucus results to really go off of, then that is the next biggest contest for Democrats to be all on the same stage together, and probably the first time that a lot of New Hampshire voters will be tuning into the race. So just 4 days before voters go to the polls, it's going to have a huge impact on their decision-making process.
Okay, thank you, Alexandra, for your insight. Alexandra Jaffe, national political reporter for the Associated Press. Thanks again for your insights. Well, the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump is expected to conclude tomorrow. That is when the Senate is scheduled to vote on the 2 impeachment charges against the president. Today, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell slammed the House Democrats' drive to impeach and confirmed that he will vote to acquit the president. Majority Leader McConnell blames Democrats for what he calls a rushed impeachment process.
We've watched a major American political party adopt the following absurd proposition. We think this president is a bull in a china shop, so we're going to drive a bulldozer through the china shop to get rid of it.
Today, McConnell defended the trial, saying senators have heard sworn video testimony from 13 witnesses, over 193 video clips, entered more than 28,000 pages of documents into evidence, including 17 depositions, and asked 180 questions.
I urge every one of our colleagues to cast the vote the facts, the evidence, the Constitution, and the common good clearly require. Vote to acquit the president.
Democratic leader Chuck Schumer maintains evidence was omitted.
I thought the House did a very good job. I thought they made a compelling case. But even if you didn't, the idea that that means you shouldn't have witnesses and documents when we're doing something as august, as important as an impeachment trial fails the laugh test.
Democrat Joe Manchin has been one possible swing vote. He suggested the Senate merely censure the president.
Censure would allow this body to unite across party lines and as an equal branch of government to formally denounce the president's actions and hold him accountable.
Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski, who seemed to consider voting with Democrats, declared late Monday she cannot support the president's impeachment.
Removal from office and being barred from ever holding another office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States is the political death penalty. The president's name is on ballots that have already been cast. The voters will pronounce a verdict in 9 months, and we must trust their judgment.
The senators will vote on the 2 articles of impeachment tomorrow, beginning at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says that he is not ready to sign a deal that would lead to peace talks in Afghanistan.
We got close once before to having an agreement, a piece of paper that we mutually executed, and the Taliban were unable to demonstrate either their will or their capacity, or both, to deliver on a reduction in violence.
The Secretary of State also says the White House will not discuss withdrawing troops from Afghanistan until it has concrete evidence the Taliban will reduce violence. He was speaking in a news conference in neighboring Uzbekistan. It is part of his tour of Europe and Asia. He is also telling countries to beware of China and its human rights violations.
Що стосується компенсації, і президент Зеленський.
The Ukrainian foreign minister says his country will demand Iran to acknowledge its guilt in the shooting down of a Ukraine passenger plane last month, which led to 176 deaths. He is asking for Iran to hand over the black boxes from the plane and preferably the remains of the plane. Officials in China released updated numbers on the deadly coronavirus outbreak. They say the virus has infected nearly 21,000 people around the world. And Hong Kong has reported its first fatality from the virus. Hospitals in the former British territory are cutting services. Thousands of medical workers are on strike for a second day to demand the border with mainland China be completely shut. One health official says there is significant risk of the virus spreading, and there is concern over a large-scale outbreak. The former president of Kenya has died. Daniel Arap Moi was the country's longest-serving leader.
We have lost a respected leader, somebody who served this country with a lot of dedication, somebody who rose to the highest office from very humble beginnings.
His death was met with mixed reactions. He went from being a school teacher to the country's president for 24 years. But when he left office in 2002, widespread corruption caused severe problems for Kenya's economy. President Arap Moi was 95 years old. Catholic bishops in Colombia are speaking up in defense of the unborn. 2 lawsuits are challenging legal abortion in the country. In a statement released last week, the bishops say abortion represents a grave violation of the sacred right to life we all have. Abortion in Colombia currently is legal in the cases of rape or if the mother's life is in danger, but there is a push to expand abortion access. And in Australia, Catholic leaders have announced a disaster relief initiative to help those affected by devastating brush fires. Catholic Emergency Relief Australia will coordinate the efforts of church organizations to help those in need following natural disasters. The fires in Australia have killed nearly 36 people and destroyed millions of acres of land. Coming up, a preview of President Donald Trump's third State of the Union address. As we reported earlier, President Donald Trump heads to Capitol Hill tonight to deliver his State of the Union address. He'll be speaking to Congress and the nation on the eve of what's anticipated to be an acquittal in his Senate impeachment trial. Tiana Lowe, commentary writer for the Washington Examiner, joins me now for a preview. Tiana, welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we are told the theme of the president's speech will be the Great American Comeback. I was at a luncheon earlier today at the White House, and the president mentioned that his speech will be rather low-key. I'd like to see what you'd like to hear the president say tonight. What are you looking for him to say?
I mean, as it should be low-key. The key to a victory lap is to remain humble. The fact is that we are in the longest bull market in American history. Stock markets are hitting record highs. The first real wage growth in over a decade is disproportionately benefiting low-income workers. Record half-century low unemployment, disproportionately affecting records for minorities. You know, this is a lot to be proud of. I think that last year at this time, Trump was in a position of defeat because it was at the end of that whole government shutdown fracas where Nancy Pelosi won. And right now, she just suffered one of the biggest losses of her political career in this Senate inevitable acquittal. So he could boast, but he'd be wise just to let the numbers speak for him.
You mentioned the economy. What else do you think he's going to highlight with his speech tonight?
I mean, it should be national security. It should involve the strike of Soleimani, the strike of al-Baghdadi. You know, the fact is Gallup found that people's faith in the status of our national security and our troops' ability to defend us is over 10 points higher than it was at the beginning of his tenure. So this is something where even if you dislike Trump on a personal level, there is a general sense among the American public that with the military's budget increased, hands untied, and we're seeing this fundamental realignment in the Middle East that does make us safer.
Tiana, do you think we'll have any surprises tonight?
I mean, Trump can always throw a curveball. I think that if we saw those Super Bowl ads over the weekend, he highlighted three incredibly important things: the economy and national security, but also his criminal justice reform plan. So this is not the same campaign that he was running leading into the 2018 midterms, where he decided to go off the walls and discussing his immigration agenda. Instead, he's focusing on things that are broadly popular, and he will know that Democrats will be writhing in their seats as they don't want to applaud freed prisoners, people giving a second chance at a free life. And that is where he trolls the best, when he lets the merits work for him. So I have a feeling that criminal justice reform bill, that will become a big apparatus in his speech.
Yeah, what a difference a year makes. You know, last year the Democrats had just taken control of the House, and nearly all the House Democrats voted for President Trump's impeachment. Let's talk about that if we can.
Yeah, you know, I mean, Pelosi's biggest mistake was letting the squad take over the reins. Pelosi was wise enough to know that impeachment was not politically valuable. I mean, despite all the emphasis given to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar, the reason why the Democrats got back the House were because smart, moderate blue dog Democrats and moderate caucus Democrats, they recouped that suburban vote. They recouped a lot of women in the suburbs. And we see the impeachment's anathema in the suburbs. Impeachment is not polling well in the swing states. I mean, Democrats could not have botched the process more, you know, with not actually letting the courts enforce the subpoenas. So the fact that Pelosi dropped the ball so badly in making those swing state and suburban Democrats so vulnerable by forcing them to an impeachment vote, the Republican Party could be in much better shape to reclaim some of those seats in the House than we thought that they would be a year ago.
Tiana, what do you think of the prospects of both sides working together going forward?
I mean, again, I think if you look at what the average Democratic voter in the country wants, what even the average Democrat in the House wants, it is so radically different than those who carry the reins of power right now. I mean, think about it. We were in March debating whether or not a resolution about a congresswoman's anti-Semitic comments should denounce hate of all kinds. They tried to what about anti-Semitism? So I think that there is a genuine capacity for the Democratic Party in the median agenda to work with Trump, and especially considering Trump is a cosmopolitan Republican. He cares about criminal justice reform in a way that I don't know that every single Tea Party Republican would have. So there's obviously Trump likes spending bills. Trump likes infrastructure packages. He's not necessarily a small C conservative, but so long as the most radical wing of the Democratic Party is carrying the reins, they're just going to continue to obstruct and melt down, and nothing will get done.
Tiana, thanks so much for your insight. We appreciate it. Tiana Lowe, commentary writer for the Washington Examiner. Thanks again for your analysis.
Thank you.
The Diocese of Crookston in Minnesota has announced that the Vatican has ordered an additional investigation into the conduct of Bishop Michael Heppner. Heppner is the first U.S. bishop to be investigated through a process developed by Pope Francis last year. He's been accused of mishandling the cases of priests accused of sexual misconduct and is reported to have pressured an alleged victim to drop his allegation of abuse against a priest. He will not be permitted to oversee sexual abuse cases in his diocese during the follow-up investigation. The Christ the King Seminary in the Diocese of Buffalo, New York will close at the end of the academic year. Operating deficits and declining enrollment are all part of the reasons for the closure. The diocese administrator says the diocese will look at new ways to move forward with its formation process for priests. Up next, asking forgiveness. What the Holy Father says about God's love for us when we go to confession. And a former football star tells us about his initiative to help people with special needs.
Di Padre che Dio ha con noi.
Pope Francis says going to confession is more than just taking away a sin. At his daily mass at the Vatican, the Holy Father says God cries for us when we confess our faults because he is our Father and loves us. And in difficult moments, we should listen to God's voice telling us about that love. Pope Francis sends a video message calling for an end to extremism and terrorism.
Un futuro libero dall'odio, dal rancore, dall'estremismo e dal terrorismo.
The Holy Father sent the message to the Arab Media Convention for Human Fraternity. He also thanked the group for their work promoting interfaith dialogue. 1 year ago today, Pope Francis signed a document on world peace with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar. The Tim Tebow Foundation hosts a Night to Shine, a prom night experience centered on God's love for people with special needs. It's the first time that the event is happening in Rome. The Night to Shine first launched in 2015 and is expected to take place in over 700 locations this month. EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief Alan Holdren spoke to the former NFL player Tim Tebow this morning. He began by asking how Tebow became involved in the project.
We want to throw the biggest party and the best party in all of these areas all around the world for them, so that they know when they're walking down a red carpet, when they're being crowned as a king or queen, that they matter, that they have significance, and more than just to us, but to the God of this universe, because we believe that everybody has value, everybody has meaning. God loves every single person. They are created in love, by love, and for love, and God loves them just the way they are.
Tebow also said that he is enjoying his trip to Rome, but a visit to the Colosseum left him struck by one main thought.
You walk into this Colosseum where the architecture, you're like, how the heck could they even make this? Like, that's incredible, and you think about all the battles that took place, but then what really hits you is there was a time when we didn't value people, and there was some haves and have-nots, and there were some people that had meaning and a lot of people that didn't.
Tebow says one of his biggest goals in life is to try and switch the narrative and give meaning to people who may now know they have it. He also discussed his initial reaction to seeing the Sistine Chapel.
It's a little overwhelming, but I think the number one thing that came to my mind was grace. Was grace, because you look at everything, all of the paintings, all of the tapestry, all of the art, everything that you get to walk through and experience. But the overarching thing of Christianity, the number one theme is grace, is God's grace. It's his love for humanity. It's his love for you and his love for me. And you see all of this, and you see the fall, and you see us mess up over and over and over again. But you see a God full of love, that is a redemptive God.
Tebow says that he is grateful God continues to love us on our best days and also on our worst ones. Tomorrow on EWTN News Nightly, we will have analysis of the president's State of the Union speech, as well as updates on the Iowa Caucus results. I'm Tracy Sable. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, good night and God bless.